Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache Snow. You can find me along with the show notes over at nachesnow.com, NACHESNOW.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. So, folks, I have a really good episode today with Lauren Carnes. Before I get into it, I just want to let you guys know the journal is available for pre-order and it's 20% off until February 1st. So please head on over to nachesnow.com/journal and go ahead and purchase it. You can also find it on Amazon if you search the Life Cleanse and probably, I guess, my name. I haven't even tried it yet, but I'm super excited. My website, of course, will give you more details about it, but you could just it links to Amazon, but you can just head on over to Amazon if you know you want a copy anyway. I'm really excited about it. But anyway, let me get into this episode because this was like a great episode. Even going back and listening to it, I was just like, wow, it was a ton of nuggets in it. So Lauren Carnes is a photographer. She started it out as a side hustle and now she does it full time. And there are 3 takeaways that I want you guys to get from this episode. And one thing she says in here, the first one is like, you have to do the work in order to really like build your portfolio, to have something to show. And so she really did that while she was side hustling, to really kind of show to the world like, hey, look at me, I'm serious. And on top of that, it just helped her perfect her craft. Also, the second thing is we talk a little bit about being willing to do like the grunt work, if you will, right? So yeah, you might not want to take an internship, be it paid or free or whatever, but sometimes you need to do that in order to learn from others and to get better. And then the third thing I want you guys to take away is don't paint yourself in a corner, because Lauren is a photographer. She started out as a wedding photographer, but now she does like food and some other things too. And she's also a communication strategist. So she could have just been a wedding photographer, which is fine, but she chose to branch out, and that's okay. Regardless if you're a photographer, looking for a photographer, have anything to do with photography, the great thing about this interview, it's really about will and determination. And I just think that she has an amazing story. And I think if we apply that to any aspect of our life, business or personal, we could get very far. So without further ado, here we go. Hello, everybody. We have Lauren here from laurencarnes.com. Welcome, Lauren.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'm really excited to dig into your photography business and talk about like how you've grown that to like other things too. I know there's like a huge interest with the people who follow this podcast around that topic. So I can't wait to dig into that stuff. But before we begin, can you just tell the listeners out there like a little bit about you before you started your photography business?
It all began in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 1988, way back when, really exciting. No, I'm just teasing. In all reality, I was born in Atlanta and I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta. And during my high school days, I was the yearbook editor of our high school. And so I helped with all of the design and the interviewing and the photography. And at the time, I really wasn't what I would call a photographer necessarily. I very quickly took to the camera. I was always the girl who at parties would have my point and shoot camera and bring it and just kind of document all the moments. And I always loved having stacks upon stacks of prints in my house. And I still have those to this day. My mom still jokingly tells me, she's like, "Are you going to keep these forever?" And you know what? I think I will. Why not?
Right.
That there's something so special about being able to capture those moments. And so in high school, that's kind of where it began. I was involved in the yearbook process and really loved being able to kind of create this heirloom, if you will, this memento that we still have that yearbook. We still have that design that I did and the photos that I took that created this really beautiful book. And so that's kind of where everything began for me, was back in the day. And I actually went
Mm.
into college thinking that I wanted to be a graphic design major because I was the yearbook editor in high school and I loved designing and I had learned how to use InDesign in high school. And I thought I wanted to be a graphic design major. And then I
Mm.
discovered that I had to be in the art program. And I am not necessarily great at drawing, but as an art student, I would have to go through these drawing and painting classes. And I discovered I was like, I don't know that I actually would be very good at that. And so my natural inclination was, okay, well, what's something else that I could do that would still let me have the opportunity to kind of be in the graphic design world? My brain went to advertising. And
Mm.
I thought, why not? I'll be an advertising major. I will still get to work in an ad agency, for example, where the graphic designers, I'm going to be working hand in hand with them. But I quickly realized that working in an ad agency as a project manager wouldn't mean that I would really have much of my hand in the pot of the graphic design sort of things. So
Mm. Mhm.
I switched from there and decided, this is all in the first probably 6 months of my college career. I decided I was going to be a public relations major because I liked people and I liked relating to the public, is what I
Mm.
thought at the time. I didn't really know. And Nache, do you know what public relations is? Do you know kind of what that concept means?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess to me, it's really kind of like because I used to, I did a internship at Edelman Public Relation Firm.
Absolutely. Yep.
So yes,
Okay. So
yeah.
you do. So for the listeners who maybe aren't as familiar, public relations, what I thought at the time was this idea of relating to the public. But what I quickly learned is public relations is actually, in the traditional sense, it's media relations. So Nache, you
Right.
remember from your Edelman days, I'm sure, the writing up a press release and a pitch and calling reporters all over the nation to tell them a story and let them know, hey, this is the story that you need to tell in your newspaper or your magazine or on your radio show tomorrow. And that was
Mhm.
my responsibility for quite some time, working in this PR agency that I worked for during my end of my college career and into the early post grad days. I worked at an agency for quite a while doing traditional public relations. And then as the rise of social media for business and for marketing came onto the scene, I had the opportunity to kind of spearhead our social media side of the agency that I worked for. It was a very small agency.
Mm.
So at a very young age, I had an opportunity that most people might not have had, to work on some really amazing clients and just to kind of dream up what it looks like to serve clients well from a social media and digital marketing standpoint. So I started doing that. And at that same time, my husband was going through the process of medical school and had been applying and found out that he was actually going to be, he's a year older than me in school. So he found out that he was going to be staying where our college town was in order to go to med school. So he had a few more years there, and I had the opportunity to continue working for that agency post grad. But once he was figuring out what his after medical school process would look like, he was applying for residencies, and it was a guarantee that we would be moving away from the town that we were living in at the time. So at
Mm.
that point in time, I had been deciding that I wanted to kind of pick up the camera again. And I was excited about this potential, basically to shoot friends' engagement photos as their wedding
Mm.
gifts. So
Okay.
I had a lot of friends getting married. I was in a sorority in college. And so being in a Southern big SEC school and being in a sorority, I had a lot of girlfriends who were getting married to their college sweetheart, for lack of a better description. And I just wanted to be able to gift them with engagement photos as their wedding gift. And so quickly learned that it wasn't just a little hobby. It wasn't just something for fun for me. I was second shooting for some amazing wedding photographers in the Atlanta area and decided that I wanted to see if I could potentially pursue it as an opportunity for a career instead of just a little bit of a side hustle. So spent
Now,
go ahead.
no, quick question. So, as far as photography, were you self-taught or did you take like some classes here and there in school?
I did not. I have never taken a photography class in the traditional sense of the word. I
Oh, wow.
taken the photography class of lots of hard work and almost apprenticing under other photographers. So learning from incredible
Ah.
photographers, and Google is an incredible teacher as well. And so I learned a lot from Google and learned a lot from various things online like Creative Live, if you've ever heard of Creative Live. Do you know Creative?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that is kind of where my photography career began, is really just learning in that way and actually reading the manual. I know that sounds kind of silly, but so often,
No.
right? Yeah, it's like they make those things for a reason, and there's some really
Right.
valuable information in there on how to use your camera.
No, I have like a good friend and she never reads instructions for anything and then she can never figure out how something works. And I'm like, read the manual. That's why they put it there.
I know,
but
and that's
but
the
it's
thing.
something so simple, but you're right. Like a lot of times people will just kind of toss it to the side or throw it away or skim through it, not realizing it really can help them learn like whatever technology they've picked up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I am notorious for getting something in the mail that I've ordered on Amazon Prime, free 2-day shipping, and it arrives at my doorstep. I'm so excited that I, kind of tear open the packaging and I look at it and I'm ready to dive in. And then I'm like, wait, I don't even know what I'm doing with this thing. And so that's when I kind of have to take a couple steps back and think of, oh, there is an entire book on how to use this piece of technology. I should look into that. So that's kind of where it began, is before the days of photography, I always had the camera and I always was telling stories, even if it was at the time through words, but
Mm.
it lended very well into transitioning into visual storytelling with a camera, with capturing imagery for couples, for brands, for now food, in order to be able to just let that transition of storytelling kind of blend. Now I do a little bit of both communication side of things and photography side of things. And it's been really neat to kind of see things come a little bit of a, 360. It's incorporating the full past 6, 7 years of my life in one career now, which is a really neat experience.
Well, no, that's cool. So I know I interrupted you a little bit in your story
Oh,
there,
you're fine.
but so with, just to kind of get back to where you were going, so you were kind of like this apprentice for several photographers. Like, how did you go about getting that? Did you shoot like the engagement photos and then use those photos to show, have a portfolio and then show them to other professional photographers and just say like, hey, I really want to get into this. Like, do you mind teaching me or kind of like paying me to be your intern? Like, how did that look?
Such a great question. I think so often people wonder, where do I even begin? It's that conundrum of, in order to get an internship, you have to have an internship, right? I think so many of us have experienced that in any career that we've done. If anyone's ever applied for any sort of job, um, they have experienced that idea of needing to have something to show for what you could possibly do, right?
Right.
And so when I first started, I had been shooting those engagement photos and I knew that I wanted to be able to kind of take my photography to the next level, but I knew I couldn't do it on my own. I was at that point already out of college, so I didn't have the opportunity to take maybe a college course on photography.
Mm.
And I'm very much a learner I'm very good at kind of hands-on learning, being able to really dive in quickly and see what I am supposed to be working toward and figuring out, based on whether it's a system or a process, figuring out how to create through that. And so I had been already creating. I had applied my previous knowledge of photography and just honestly, my love of being able to tell these couples stories. At the time I was shooting these engagement sessions and I just got to know them and wanted to be able to really show their emotion and the way that they interact together. So I just started doing that. And from there, I had one single moment of bravery and boldness, and my husband was in a wedding, and I had seen the photography of the people who were shooting the wedding prior. The bride had let me know, and I had looked at their photos and thought they were really beautiful and just really was very impressed with their work. And we were at the wedding and they were showcasing this idea of a same day slideshow. So essentially they go during the dinner and edit a few photos from previous hours of the day and kind of showcase them at the reception. And I had
Oh,
never seen
wow.
that. Yeah, amazing, right? Such a great concept.
Right. Yeah.
and I had never seen it done before. And like I said, I had been in a lot of weddings, had attended a lot of weddings. A lot of friends were getting married, so that was just something new and unique that I really thought stood out. And so I walked over to it's a husband and wife team that I trained under at that point in time, and I walked over and just let them know that I thought it was really amazing what they were doing, and loved that they had created that same day slideshow. And I mentioned to them, just in that moment of bravery, I figured, why not? Here is someone who seems receptive and seems really kind. And so I mentioned, would you, ever be willing to get coffee, or if ever you need any assistance or help, I would love to join you guys in any way that you see fit. And they were super responsive, incredibly kind. And from that point on, there was a good chunk of time that I always tell people I had been doing the work prior. I had been doing the work in order to show the work, right? And
Right.
so it's important to be able to not just say, hey, I want to pick your brain. That's something that is not necessarily the best way to go about these kinds of things, but instead
Mhm.
showing that there is value that you can add, and also
Mhm.
that you have already been taking strides and steps forward in order to be able to add that value. So I kind of explained that my background was in PR and social media, and that I would be able to help if anything they needed in that realm. And also that I was just good at hustling. Like I
Right.
was at carrying bags. I could go and grab brides from the bridal suite. I could entertain the flower girl, whatever they needed, I was willing. And I kind of
Mm.
made it clear that sometimes when you first begin whatever your passion is, whatever your kind of future dream career is, you
Mhm.
don't always begin on the top tier. And in fact, I'd argue that you usually begin on the very bottom tier, right? You have to be
Right.
willing to do those intern duties to get the coffee. If you could see me, I'm doing air quotes, kind
Right.
of coffee. Whatever it is that someone needs done, I always encourage people. And what I did at the time was I found something that I was able to do that maybe someone else wouldn't be able to do. And I offered
Mhm.
that as a service to someone. And that's really where
Okay.
it began. And they were super receptive. And from there, I second shot a lot of, or third shot technically, a lot of weddings for free because I wanted to get the experience. And it led to paid second shooting opportunities. And then from there led to opportunities for building my portfolio and being able to showcase to these couples that I would be able to shoot their weddings as well. And so it just kind of was that snowball effect. But it all started by the proverbial getting the coffee.
Oh, wow. And so at this point, were you out of school?
I was out of school. My husband was in medical school, so he was paying to work 80 hours a week, if you will.
Right, right,
If you know of anyone who has been through the medical school process or even law school, that sort of thing, it's a
Yeah.
lot of time and effort. And so I was working a full-time job and then some. My agency that I worked for was small but mighty, is how we used to describe it, and still how I describe it. It was a small team, but we had amazing clients. And
Okay.
so I had great opportunities there. So I was working a full-time job there. And then on nights, I would go home and edit and kind of build a website and do shooting. And then on the weekends, I would drive from, at the time, I was living in Athens, Georgia. And I would drive to Atlanta and kind of surrounding areas, which is about an hour to an hour and a half away. And I would go and shoot these weddings with this photography couple. And then I would come back and do it all over again. So, for all of you
Oh,
listeners out there, for
wow.
all of the people who are listening and thinking about how difficult it is to maybe have the full time job and the side hustle, or, kind of be, a friend of mine, Kat Schmoyer, calls it on the road to full time.
Right.
You are there. Know that we have all been there. So, we know how it is.
Wow. And so at what point, so you're kind of doing this, really kind of balancing, two jobs, 9 to 5, then working kind of like the side hustle, like nights and weekends. At what point did you say, like, you know what? Or did you ever say, because, I'm not sure if you still kind of do like that PR or work for a PR company on the side now, but did you ever just say, like, you know what? I'm just going to do this photography thing full time?
I did.
Mm.
And it's funny that you ask, and it's funny that you say, I don't know if you still do this on the side. It kind of, I'll give a little bit of the in between season and then let you know where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Um, when my husband was interviewing for residency programs and we knew that we would be moving, I, of course, wanted to be supportive of wherever he wanted to go. So we could have been as far as Texas or Pennsylvania and as close as Augusta, Georgia, which is where we currently live. And Augusta is about an hour and 45 minutes from Athens and about 2.5, 3 hours away from Atlanta. And our families are in Atlanta still. So, it's fairly close to what we've known for pretty much our whole lives. And when we found out that he had matched in Augusta, we had been discussing at that point in time, I had already had some inquiries from weddings that they wanted me to shoot their wedding, but I told them, I don't know where I'm going to be. I could live, a 6-hour plane flight away from you. And so I told them, wait until we see where I would potentially be living, and then I will let you know if I can shoot your wedding. And at that point in time, I knew that I wouldn't be able to work full-time remotely for the company that I had been working for. And so we kind of set up an arrangement that for a season, I would work part-time remotely. And I did that for a while I kind of built up my photography business. And when it got to the point where I realized that I couldn't serve both clients, so my photography side of the business and also working at the agency, when I felt like I couldn't serve them both well with my full capacity, that is when I knew that it was time to make a decision. And it's hard to make a decision. It's hard to know when that is right. But I am very much a planner. And I had been very intentional about ensuring that I wasn't going to take the leap into a career that wouldn't be able to afford our lifestyle.
Right.
And like I said, my husband had been in medical school. We have a lot of med school loans that we have to pay back. And so I wanted to be really intentional about that and wanted to take care of our family as well. And so when I got to the point where I realized that I wasn't able to serve them both well, then I knew that it was time to kind of take that step. And fortunately, the agency that I worked for, they are still some of my biggest cheerleaders. And I am so grateful for them. They are so much of why I believe that I am able to run this business in the way that I do is from my days working there and also my days working as a marketing director at a local Chick-fil-A when I lived in Athens as well. And so I went full-time doing photography. I thought I would be just a wedding photographer forever. That was like my end game. My first full year of business, I shot 24 weddings in a year.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a lot.
That's a lot.
It was a lot of weddings. I was shooting pretty much every weekend based on weddings and engagement sessions. And most of those weddings were not in the Augusta area because, like I said, I originally am from Atlanta and had lived in Athens. So they were kind of in the greater Georgia, South Carolina area. So I traveled a lot on the weekends during that time. And I did that for about 2 years. I did 24 and then 23, 2 years in a row of that. And I then realized that people started asking me. So this kind of goes back to, did I ever make the leap? And then what? People started asking me about how I had marketed my business and how I had grown it quickly and been able to quickly build a full-time photography business with no prior really education in photography. And I explained how I attribute it entirely to all things marketing, social media, public relations, to that background. That is where I really found that was kind of my niche. And so people started asking if they could hire me to teach them how to do that for their businesses. And at first I just kind of laughed because I had been doing that for friends. And I don't know, Nache, if you have a skill set like this or a particular thing. Maybe it's, I have someone that I was just speaking with who is like this about fashion. Her friends always came to her for fashion insight. They would say, what should I wear on this date? I'm to this interview. What should I wear? And she quickly realized that people started asking her and she was like, I could make actually a career out of this. And so that is kind of what happened with me. I had been telling people, giving insight and sharing my thoughts and my background with people as they were building their small businesses. And over time, I started realizing that I could actually incorporate that into part of my business. So now I do both photography and communications, consulting, and coaching for creative entrepreneurs and small business owners, primarily in the kind of lifestyle, creative, and food realm. So it's fun to see the way that it has transitioned over time. And that's something that I thought would be just going full time with photography and forever doing wedding photography has just morphed and kind of become all of my interests and all of my passions into one. So I never thought I'd be
Yeah.
here, but I do
There you
love.
go. Yeah. Well, yeah, because on your website too, I see like, because of course there's wedding on there, but then I was looking like you have like the travel and the food too, which is really amazing. So I was wondering how you even, made that shift from wedding, but also kind of offering almost a lifestyle type of photography options too.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It came out of a natural progression for my love of food and love of travel. And
Hmm.
also out of when I had launched my photography business in a new city where I knew no one, I needed something to shoot. And so the only thing
Right.
I had easy access to was my kitchen and my refrigerator. And I love cooking. So I found something to shoot.
So that's like very interesting because of course like you knew how to definitely market to people who are getting married. And so how did you make not really make the switch because you're still doing weddings too, but how did you then say like, okay, hey guys, look at my, website. Like if you have like a product or if you're like a chef, a cook or whatever, like I could take your, your photos for you. Because that's like
Right.
almost a different, like a completely different clientele.
It is. I have a lot of different ideal clients, if you will. I'm doing the air quotes again. I have a lot of different target audiences because a couple is very different than a chef or, someone who is maybe a food blogger looking for someone to shoot their recipes then is very different than an editorial side of food and lifestyle photography. And that's very different than communications sort of thing. So,
Right.
really, what I did was in the same way that I just, like I mentioned earlier, I find a system that works for me and I apply it and tweak it. I kind of, no need to reinvent the wheel, if you will.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I applied the system of start shooting engagement photos, get work to showcase what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and then make yourself available and present it to the public as look at what I have to offer. And that's what I did with food as well. I started shooting in my kitchen and shot a lot just for fun. It was more out of I wanted to be a photographer and I wanted to photograph things. And so I started shooting what I had available. And then I see it as almost positioning yourself in the best spot to be able to showcase the work that you can do.
And
And
then
so go ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask because I was interested. I was talking to a photographer the other day, and she wants to do editorial, lifestyle, glamour, and then some fine arts too. And so she was like, "I'm not sure if I could have them all on one site, and if I do have them on all of the portfolios on one site, then how do I kind of like make sure that I'm marketing to like the right audience?" So I was just curious, like how did you find that balance? Like, did you like send out emails or kind of like fillers to like, let's say the food bloggers just to say, hey, look at this page on my website and here's some good examples of like some photography I can, do for you. So like, how did you navigate, working, I guess, with those different audiences? Because I think a lot of photographers struggle with that.
Right. I found very quickly that the one thing that was an overarching theme for my brand is me.
Mm,
And some people get nervous about that, right? It can feel a little bit overwhelming or a little intimidating to kind of put your name on something and kind of have you be your brand. But I think
right.
in this digital world where it's so easy for everyone just to be cookie cutter, to be like everyone else, the only thing that makes you unique and makes you different is you.
Mm,
And so for me, although food and weddings and lifestyle and travel and communications consulting and coaching, although all of that is different, the one thing that it is being offered by is Lauren Carnes.
mm,
And so
mm-hmm.
instead of positioning it as I am a wedding photographer, I positioned myself as I'm a photographer and a communications strategist or a communications coach or that sort of thing. So it is Lauren Carnes offers these services. And ultimately, my goal is that my photography work would all have a similar editing style. So if you like the way that I edit weddings, that's how I also edit food. It is all very clean and bright. It is very true to life, true colors, and really just kind of lets the imagery speak for itself, lets the story come alive through the imagery. And so, for example, for your friend, I would really encourage her if she does feel as though she would want to have her portfolio all on one site. I have found that some of my best wedding clients have come because they're really into the fact that I love shooting food. And that some of my best food clients have come as a referral from a wedding client. And so to me, I am not mutually exclusive, right? Like I am not over here doing one thing and over here doing another. I'm doing it all. It all comes out of my one little home office every day, day in and day out. It all comes from Lauren Carnes' office. And so in the end, my thought is if I can really position it more as a lifestyle brand. So Lauren Carnes, the brand of creative entrepreneur, then I have a better chance than trying to essentially divide it among multiple different brands and manage multiple brands. Because really, I don't have time to manage 5 different Instagram accounts, right?
Yeah, that's what I was telling her. I'm like, because she was thinking about like doing a couple of sites, and I'm like, that just gets really tricky. And then you spend most of your time managing multiple social media accounts, making sure 2 websites are up to date. And, it just seems like it's a little much. Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't mean that it won't always make sense to do it the way that I do it right now. But it has worked for me thus far. And I have actually found that it gives people more of a holistic picture of what I can offer. And it also has created almost a niche of my own, where a lot of the work that I do is twofold. It is photography and communications work for someone. And it is the visual side meets the copy side. And that's something that I don't know that many people have the ability to bridge that gap. And so I see it as if we as creatives or as business owners have the opportunity to make our own niche, then why not? Because there's no one telling us, right?
Right.
And so for her, for example, if she wants to be someone who's doing this lifestyle and glamour, where is she able to kind of bridge that gap? And so I always, especially when I'm working for my communications coaching clients, I help them kind of think through what it is that makes them unique and what is their differentiating factor. So what makes them different than everybody else? And what is it that they can offer that nobody else can offer? Yeah. And for her, I just think it's super exciting for her to have this opportunity to kind of create not just a website, but a photography brand that offers potentially this glamour photography, right? That she can actually incorporate into the editorial and lifestyle. Because what you'll find in editorial photography is that a lot of times there is a lot of that glamour fashion element to it. Even if it is for example, recently I had a shoot that I did a culinary tour of Columbia, South Carolina for Garden and Gun, and photographed a bunch of different restaurants. There's still an element of kind of what the lighting is that I apply, for example, for weddings. That's how I light my food. And so kind of finding how whatever you are doing, your different skill sets, your different passions can kind of play off of and influence the others is so much of what makes us unique, makes us different than everyone else. So
no, I completely agree because like even when I look across like and I was talking to her about this too, like your food, travel, and wedding, like I was talking to her about like even though those things might be very different, like her editorial glamour and so forth, as long as people see kind of you in those different photos, be it a product photo, an editorial photo, or a wedding photo,
Absolutely.
right, it's like consistent with your brand. And even when I look at, kind of what you're doing too, like let's say if for some reason like your consulting business just like grew out of control and you decided to like start off with offering online classes or something like that, you could then say like, okay, maybe it makes sense now for me to have like a separate website because that part of the business is just expanding in different ways, right? And so
Absolutely.
it's like figuring it or making moves when it makes sense, I guess.
Absolutely. I love that, Nache, making moves when it makes sense because sometimes there are going to be things that don't necessarily fall under the umbrella of Lauren Carnes. And I think even a perfect example of that is I lead something called the Mastermind Retreat with a few friends where we invite women from all over the nation to come and do an intimate retreat, kind of a conference, but not in the traditional conference setting. So
Mm.
we all stay in the same house and we eat together, we wake up together, we chat together all day. There's educational time, there's fellowship time, and just hanging out time. And that isn't necessarily a Lauren Carnes brand, right? I
Mhm.
am a part of it, so I talk about it on my brand, but that's not something that necessarily I'm going to have on my website. Instead,
Right.
it's something that's separate. And so if it doesn't really fall under the umbrella, I just, pop open a different umbrella. And
Right.
I've got two hands. And so, not to say to spread yourself too thin, because I know that it's easy for us multi passionate people to be able to do that, but just to find what feels like a natural fit for you. And if something doesn't, feeling the freedom to say no. But if something feels like a natural fit and a natural extension of your own brand and of that personal brand that you've created, I think that if you have the skill set and if you have the opportunity, or if you feel as though you want to raise your hand to take a step forward in it, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice to not explore if it's something that you would like to be incorporating into your brand. So that's really what's brought me to where I am today. There are things that I've kind of raised my hand for that I was like, sure, I think that
Mm.
I could offer service here. And it has just transformed the way that my business runs and the services that I can offer people in just an entirely different direction of my business, which has been really neat to see.
No, that's great. And then just like a couple more questions as we wrap up here. My goodness, I could talk to you all day, but I'm like, oop, let me wrap up. I'm like, wait a minute. But I noticed that you've been featured in like multiple publications. And so I think sometimes people struggle with kind of getting that press to really get their name out there. Do you have any tips for folks that are photographers or even in other businesses, like a way for them to like make themselves kind of known in either their community or with like publications?
I absolutely do. So, my first tip is to not be afraid to submit or to pitch yourself.
Mm.
And that just seems like, okay, well, duh, that's nice in theory. But I think so often people just don't think that they have anything of value to offer.
Mm.
And I think we as creative entrepreneurs, once again, we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our industry and to just the world in general to put our work out there and to let people know that what we have to offer. And I think that comes back to my background in public relations and traditional PR and media relations is that it all began by me telling stories. It all began by writing a press release and being bold enough to call up the reporter of the New York Times and pitch them on a random Nike store grand opening. These are things
Mm.
that's where it began. And that's easy to do things that just seem, oh, well, that's simple. Who doesn't want to hear about a Nike opening? What
Right.
about if it's someone who feels like they're just me, little old me in, small town? I think that you actually have a better opportunity of getting really great press and a great feature in that setting because it's rare that you really see people pursuing their passions these days. I think so often people get stale and stagnant and feel the level of comfort of the situation that they're in and not willing to kind of step outside their comfort zone and do some good in the world. And
Mm.
so, not being afraid to be bold and write up your story or create content that allows you to pitch and to submit. So, on the photography side, and on the small business owner side. If you are in a small town or a big town, find what it is about what makes you unique and find your local publication and tell them a lifestyle story. Tell them the founder story. So the story of kind of how you started your business and what led you to be there. Tell them the story of a unique twist on perhaps it is something holiday related and maybe you are an event planner and your passion is party planning. So incorporating your party planning and your event planning, pitching the story of 5 easy ways to be a great hostess at the holidays, for example. So coming up with something that feels timely, relevant, and of interest to your audience. So to your newspaper, to your magazine, to your local town, what is of interest to them that you can have to offer, and being bold and pitching it. And then finally, the last thing that you need to make sure that you do in these situations is whether you're submitting a wedding or a style shoot to be published, or you are pitching for magazine, newspaper sort of thing as a small business owner, on both sides, you need to make sure that you provide that full, easy package. So something that's going to make it really simple for them to say yes. You want to make sure that you have all of the imagery in the proper size that they've requested. You want to make sure that you have a headshot. And when I say headshot, I don't mean selfie from your iPhone.
I know, right?
Great cameras, right? I know. And it's easy. That's simple. But that also is something that everyone else can do. So if we're trying to set ourselves apart, making sure that we really do that and we showcase that level of professionalism, a lot of times that does come across through something like a headshot. And having a website to be able to direct people back to, I think, is so important. And it doesn't have to be just an outrageously amazing website. Having something, you want to be able to show whoever you're reaching out to that you are equipped to handle the potential business that might come in from being featured somewhere. And so having those images, having your headshot, having the website, and then finally telling the story. So eloquently writing out what it is that you are sharing with them, whether it is in an email pitch or a press release. And you can look up templates for press releases online. And also, if ever you have any questions, please, people, don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is what I'm here for, is to be able to kind of showcase what you can do best and how you can do it best. So writing up that story and making sure that you send it to them in the way that they want it packaged, so that they just literally have to click a button, forward it along to their editorial team, and they are moving on. They don't have to think twice, and it makes it really easy and quick for them. And ultimately, that's your goal, is you want to help them help you, essentially. So making it really simple for them to want to feature you, because they don't have to do any extra work for it. That is my best recommendation for any time you're trying to submit or pitch yourself to be published somewhere. That is exactly what you should do. And finally, shameless plug, because I do some communications consulting for the Rising Tide Society. And we always are looking for great content for our monthly guides and our blogs. And that is a really great place to be able to submit, to start, to go ahead and get good SEO link backs for your website, because we are always looking for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there, because that's a great place to be able to get featured. Each month we have a different topic of content, and are always welcoming creative entrepreneurs from all over, literally worldwide. So wherever you are, to submit. So that's a great place also to go ahead and kind of find your niche and figure out what month our editorial calendar is, and go ahead and send it over.
Oh, great advice.
Hey.
And one more quick question before I just get into the 2 wrap-up questions. And I'm just curious, because I think like people kind of like getting to know like people's day-to-day kind of activities. Like, what is like a typical day for you?
Oh, you're so funny. So that is my husband's favorite question. It makes me just smile hearing you ask that, because whenever, like in kind of a small talk setting, that is the question that he asks immediately, is so like, what does a typical day look like for you? For me, every day is different. And I know that you probably hear that a lot, but because I do such a wide variety of things and such a wide traveling space, some days am in the office from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And other days I literally don't sit at the computer for even 30 seconds. So it is very varied, but there is there are a couple consistencies. One is that when I wake up, I have quiet time sitting on the couch, snuggling my dog, because it's the best way to begin the day, if you ask me.
Right. I agree.
And I typically finish every single day when I'm in town. If I'm out of town, obviously, this is not possible. But my husband and I cook together pretty much every night. And
Oh,
that
cool.
is something that is just one of our favorite things to do together. It didn't used to be possible based on his schedule, but we are trying to be more and more intentional about carving out that time and really just spending time in the kitchen. We just recently got a record player, so turning on a record, turning on some vinyl, and pouring a glass of wine and making dinner together. So other than that, there's photography in there. There are coaching sessions where I sit down and chat with creative entrepreneurs about how to execute their communication strategy well. There is photo shooting. There is photo editing. There is lots of emailing. So every day is a little bit different, but it always begins and ends with both of those things. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, very cool. So, just a couple of wrap up questions. Have you discovered your passion? And it could be, but it doesn't have to be photography. If so, what is it? And if not, what are you doing to discover it?
So I think my passion is gathering people together, and particularly around a table. I think that there is so much value in being able to sit down and enjoy a meal together and really get to know someone on a more personal basis instead of just in this digital world on a single Instagram post. I think there's just so much value in actually getting face to face with people and sitting across the table and just leveling with someone and all enjoying a meal together. It's one of my favorite things. I love to cook. I love to eat. I love to go out to eat and experience new restaurants. And so that is one side of the passion. And then in addition to that, being able to experience that abroad as well. We love to travel, and it also can be in the United States. We just love to experience new places. And I think both the hearing people's stories around a table and experiencing the stories and the lives of people outside of my little world that I live in currently really helps me do my job as a photographer and a communications strategist better, because I learn more about different people and their experiences and how people react to marketing and what type of photography resonates with people. And you learn those things just in the day-to-day interactions with people. So those are definitely my passions, and I am very grateful for the opportunity to do this career. And I'm sure that anyone listening who has kind of a business or a dream of a business feels that same way, that we're just grateful to get to do what we do.
And what is one thing that you can't live without? It could be anything: tech, furniture, makeup, like food, anything.
So when we were talking earlier, I was trying to think of, there are so many things that I feel like I'm like, I can't live without that. I have to have it. But it really keeps coming back to really good food, great travel, and doing that with my husband and my dog. If I could bring my dog on every adventure that we want, I would. I think it's like the best thing since sliced bread. And so, but in a more just like kind of simple, silly thing, what I kept coming up with was smoothie bowls.
Oh my God. Those are so good. I've just been introduced to them and I'm like, why didn't I know about these before?
Right. They're amazing. I only just found out about them. Like, I've always loved smoothies, right? Like, I grew up going to Smoothie King or Planet Smoothie, whatever. But I just discovered smoothie bowls, like an acai bowl, earlier this year when we were traveling. We traveled to the coast of California from San Francisco to San Diego, and we road tripped. And we would stop in these cities, and all of them would have, especially in Southern California, they would have these smoothie bowls, acai bowls. And ever since then, I cannot get enough of them. I asked for a Vitamix for Christmas. I'm very excited about it.
Oh, you went top of the line. Yeah.
I love to cook, and it can be used for a lot of different things. And I figure if I make smoothie bowls as much as I do, they can be breakfast, they can be snack, they can be dinner, they can be lunch, whatever it is. Yeah. I also make a great dessert smoothie bowl.
Neat.
So I'd say smoothie bowls are my current obsession.
Yeah, I even told my husband, I'm like, I need to learn how to make it because I actually went for coffee with one of my podcast guests, and because she lives in the area, and she took me to this place called Vigilante Coffee. And then so I guess for those out there listening, like a smoothie bowl is essentially like it's like a smoothie on the bottom, and at least the one I had, it was like the smoothie was on the bottom, then it's like a layer of granola, and then there was like fruit on top, and the one I had, the fruit was like dipped in honey. It was like so
Yep,
delicious. I was
sounds
like,
amazing.
why have I never had this?
Yeah, they are so easy to make. You would like people are always blown away. At the mastermind retreat that I mentioned a few minutes ago, I was laughing because we asked the ladies as we were preparing for it. We wanted to get their insight about what they wanted to learn and what kind of education they wanted. And
Yeah.
one of them requested that we do a smoothie bowl tutorial. So that was it was kind of a joke education segment, but we did do a smoothie bowl tutorial for
Oh,
breakfast one
that's
morning.
hilarious.
Very easy to make. So if you ever have questions or if anyone ever needs any help on making their smoothie bowls, I'm happy to give insight because I think everyone should eat them.
Yeah, very cool. And then can you just tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yes, I can be found at laurencarnes.com. So it's LaurenCarnes.com. And that is my website, obviously, but my social media of choice is Instagram. And my Instagram is at Lauren L as in Lauren Carnes. So Lauren L Carnes is my Instagram. And I share a lot of Instagram stories on there. And I share my smoothie bowls there as well. So you can see what I'm eating. My Instagram stories are full of lots of food and puppy snuggles. So be prepared.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think the information you have shared is like, if people just like take notes, even though it'll definitely be in the show notes, but if they just act on what you've said, I think they are going to be really successful in 2018. So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge.
I am so honored to have had the chance. Thank you.
What did I tell you guys? Amazing. So this was a longer episode, so I am going to wrap it up quick, but I will say, hey, two other things to take away. Don't be afraid to pitch yourself. And, I asked her about her daily routine. Think about what your daily routine is. Like, is there a way you can change it in order to incorporate something that you want to do more of, be it cook, quiet time, or whatever? Anyway, I just asked two things of you. One, if you would subscribe to the podcast and rate me 5 stars. I'd love you forever. And two, head on over to nachesnow.com/journal and please pick up a copy of the Life Cleanse Journal. All right. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing morning, noon, and night. And I will talk to you next time and bring you another amazing guest. Take care.